You're listening to Pixelated Audio Episode 3. Join us ringside this week as we take a look at Nintendo's Punch-Out!
We're back for another episode of Pixelated Audio with some great music lined up from Nintendo's Punch-Out! Series. So let's get started. I'm your host, James.
And I'm Brian. And with a series as big as this, it's a little ambitious for us to tackle this as our third episode, but we figured, just about everybody can relate on some level, so...
Yeah, and you guys are probably in the same boat as us. I mean, we grew up with it, and it really defined our early gaming experiences.
It had all the right components. I mean, it had this challenging, reflex-based gameplay, and then you combine that with this really unique character design, and you have a game that, holds up 30 years later.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, it's a pretty simple concept, but that really is what makes Punch-Out! Such a fun game. Anyway, we wanted to take a deeper look into its history and kind of highlight its music. The track that brought us in was the main theme from the Punch-Out! Arcade game.
And we have a lot of music to play, so we're going to start off with some history. So Punch-Out! Was released in 1984 and Super Punch-Out! Just a year later in 1985 in both Japan and America by Nintendo. And we've decided to kind of clump these two together since they're pretty identical, but we're still going to kind of talk about the differences a bit too.
Punch-Out! Was designed by Genyo Takeda. He was a general manager for Nintendo, and what I think is really interesting about this guy is he was a creator for software early on for games like Punch-Out! And Star Tropics, but when he was actually a lot more responsible for the hardware side of Nintendo's R&D.
And you can probably see this because of his, influence on how the arcade was designed, and Nintendo already had, arcade machines out during the time, and Punch-Out's cabinets were really unique. They kind of broke away from what was typically going on.
Right.
And, by this, I mean, you have two separate displays to kind of see, action on different areas, so...
Right, and as a marketing tactic, this was pretty brilliant because nobody else was doing this, and it really made the cabinet stand out compared to its competition.
Right.
So for both Punch-Out! And Super Punch-Out!, on the top screen, it shows the players and their details hanging from what look like banners from the rafter. Plus you have the round timer and scores, and it kind of looks like a scoreboard hanging above the ring.
Right, and this layout gives the characters a lot more screen real estate to kind of show off their details. And this then leaves the lower screen a lot more, empty and free to kind of really showcase that action.
Right.
But moving on, in these first two games, you play as a green-haired challenger. We don't have a name for him. He's just challenger in the game stats. And you also kind of take on this wireframe body as you fight.
Yeah, and that really works to help focus you on what your gloves are doing. And I think it also kind of helps you feel more like a 3D environment with the character overlap.
Yeah, I think so too. The control panel has basically just a joystick, which allows you to dodge and, block. And you also have a button for your left fist and a button for your right. And then there's also a button that's like 3 times the size in the bottom right-hand corner of the panel. And this you use as your knockout blow when your power meter fills all the way up.
Yeah, and I think that's what made this game so memorable, the animation and the great character designs. And the credit for those designs goes to Shigeru Miyamoto, who had just designed Mario and Donkey Kong a few years earlier.
Right, and it was a lot more difficult to design and animate characters back then too, because what they had to do was essentially just print out this giant piece of graph paper and then draw the characters, pixel by pixel. And then for Punch-Out!, they were actually redone, and an animation studio actually picked them up called Studio Junyo, and they kind of finished it off and finalized the version.
So the first Punch-Out! Title features Glass Joe, Piston Hurricane, Bald Bull, Kid Quick, Pizza Pasta, and Mr. Sandman.
Pizza Pasta. I don't know how they assumed that was going to be okay and nobody was going to be offended.
Right. Maybe they thought that they had a good relationship with the Italians with, creating Mario.
Right.
Super Punch-Out! Features Bear Hugger, Dragon Chan, Vodka Drunkinsky.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great Tiger, and Super Macho Man. And really, this is the only difference between the two games, other than the fact that Super Punch-Out! Was a lot harder than the original Punch-Out!.
Yeah, it was a lot more difficult. Anyways, moving on to the composer. This was the first game composed by Koji Kondo, and he composed nearly every major Mario and Zelda game ever released. So you definitely know his music.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. I mean, and he did things like Star Fox and Pikmin, and
That's right.
Just a ton of other really great stuff. And it's just really cool to see that he started his career out on a game like Punch-Out.
So normally here's where we'd play some of the tracks, but other than that first track that we came in with, the main theme, there really aren't any others. And Super Punch-Out actually uses the exact same music, so we don't have a lot to work with.
And it's funny that Punch-Out and Super Punch-Out weren't the only coin-op games in the series. There was a spin-off game called Arm Wrestling that was released in 1985 with the same dual-screen setup and similar look, except you were arm wrestling instead of boxing. And even Bald Bull makes an appearance.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because it's really important because it's the last independently developed arcade title Nintendo did. And so it's got this really cool significance, well, at least for the company.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a cool idea. I mean, especially as an offshoot.
So anyway, we've kind of covered the early history, so let's move on to the NES. And this is where the game really, became accessible and really gained its popularity.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was released on the NES in 1987 and was designed again by Genyo Takeda and Makoto Wada.
And Wada was responsible for the character portraits that you see between the rounds.
And there were some other changes to the game when it came to the NES. Like now you play as Little Mac, who's this little tiny boxer who takes on all these giant fighters that tower over him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's the only game on the NES that uses the MMC2 chip, and that's a memory mapper. And what it does is it allows the developers to actually, create these massive sprites and display them on the screen. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Anyways, the health bar is back, and there's also a fatigue meter now. And like when you miss a punch or you get hit, that meter slowly drops down. And when it hits 0, your character kind of flashes pink. And there's not really much you can do but, dodge or just wait it out at that point.
Right.
It kind of makes it so you can't just like wildly, punch, and you really have to strategize and kind of wait for that opening.
Right. It adds a whole new layer on top of what the arcade had kind of started.
Exactly.
And they also took out the KO meter, and now you have a star power punch. But since the NES only had 2 buttons, you had to hit the start button to be able to use it.
Right.
So it's kind of like the arcade in the fact that it has a third button to do this attack.
Awesome, yeah. So we have 3 composers for Punch-Out. The first is Yukio Kaneoka, who did Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., and Popeye, and really a lot of those early first-party Nintendo games. We also have Akito Nakatsuka, who did Ice Climber, Excite Bike, Zelda 2, all for the NES. And lastly, we have Kenji Yamamoto, and he basically did the music for like nearly every single Metroid game, including some of the spin-off games too. So let's get into a block. What do we got?
The tracks we have lined up are Fight Theme, Bicycle Training, Little Mac Down, and Opponent Down. So let's give those a listen, and we'll be right back.
So you just heard Fight Theme, Bicycle Training, Little Mac Down, and Opponent Down. And the composers again are Yukio Kaneoka, Akito Nakatsuka, and Kenji Yamamoto.
These songs are so good, and they're perfectly placed within the game to get that maximum effect of what they're trying to do.
I know, they're really iconic. I mean, you know, in the fight theme, you start, you know, the game up and you're already pumped up, and it has that, you know, underlying kind of bass kind of that keeps going throughout the thing, and it just keeps you like on your toes. It's like this really strong energy that, you know, keeps you going through the whole match.
Right. It's really dramatic. And I mean, I really love this song. And as a kid, like, you're small too. So it really kind of helps you feel like, oh, the underdog, like, I'm going to help this underdog beat all these giant fighters.
Yeah.
You know?
You feel like you're Little Mac.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. Bicycle Training, you know, it's really taken right out of Rocky at that point.
Yeah, and it fits into like a really great point too. Like the song is really good, and it still feels triumphant and kind of dramatic, and you just won a title, and you got to train to get ready for your next, like the upgraded league, like the next level up, and it feels so great to kind of associate that with that track.
I don't know. For me, it was always more like, oh, finally I get to take a rest, because I'd be, you know, hitting those buttons and be so intense and like not blink for like, you know, 3 whole minutes. And so, you know, finally getting that break with the bicycle training, I was like,
you just
oh
gotta sit
God,
there and
I'd
watch.
like drop the controller and just lay on my back on the carpet and just be like, and let my heart kind of, you know, go back to the right pace. So Little Mac Down is the next track. And, you know, these tracks are loops, so we only wanted to play, you know, just a few of the loops before it gets like a little over repetitive. But
right, and then this track is meant to be much more like suspenseful and kind of like induce like panic. You know? And
so this is where you're mashing those buttons like
like
crazy.
you just got knocked down, and you don't know if you're going to be able to get back up. So like it really makes you feel panicked, like, oh no, like this could be it. This could be the end of this match. And
the next song is actually kind of like the reverse of that, because and it actually kind of sounds like it's in reverse, right?
Like it's a very similar kind of melody or whatever, and except for now it's, instead of being very panic like, it's very triumphant, like, I just did this. I knocked this guy down. Like, this could be it. This could be the end of the match.
I still always had a little bit of a panic going on during that, because you know, watching the timer, like the, you know, Mario referee go, you know, 1, 2, 3,
and then
4, 5, and he gets kind of back up and he falls back down. It's like, oh my God, just let me get this KO.
And someone would just get right back up, and you're just like, oh my God, like, oh, why couldn't you just stay down? Like, or some of them get up really abruptly too, and you're just like, oh.
Anyways, it's a great track. It's very iconic.
Right.
So originally, Punch-Out got Mike Tyson's name tacked onto it because apparently the president of Nintendo, and at that time it was Minoru Arakawa. Anyways, he was so impressed that after watching him fight in person, he was like, you know, we got to license this guy to use in our upcoming game for the NES.
Right, and we saw them do this for the European version of Super Punch-Out for the arcade by renaming it Frank Bruno Boxing. Now, there's a couple of rumors that are circulating around the title change from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out to just Punch-Out. One of the rumors is that he had no idea that they were making a game with his name attached to it, and when he found out, he wasn't happy with it. So, but I mean, obviously that's not true.
Right, and I mean, he knew about the game and he was paid for the use of his name, so obviously that's incorrect. But anyways, there's another rumor too that because of his rape charges, Nintendo was like, you know, we got to keep our distance from this guy. So, but you know, that's also not true.
So really, to kind of lay this to rest, in 1990, the 3-year agreement they had to use his name was up, and Nintendo chose not to renew it. And that was basically just because he had lost his title to Buster Douglas.
No, it's pretty simple, and there's a lot. It's weird how there's so many rumors around it, but it's, you know, something as simple as just, you know, we don't want to use his name anymore. Let's just not renew it.
I think people like drama.
Yeah. So, anyways, now that that's all cleared up, and we kind of talked about how awesome the character design was, we thought it'd be kind of fun to, you know, throw all their themes into like a block, more of like a fighter montage. They're all pretty short, so
yeah. So let's see here. We have the Glass Joe, Mr. Sandman intro, Von Kaiser Super Macho Man intro, Piston Honda, Don Flamenco, Soda Popkinski, and finally the Great Tiger, Bald Bull, Tyson, Mr. Dream intro. So let's take a listen to these and we'll be right back.
So you just heard Glass Joe, Mr. Sandman's intro, Von Kaiser, Super Macho Man's intro, Piston Honda, Don Flamenco, King Hippo, Soda Popinski, Great Tiger, Bald Bull, Tyson, Mr. Dream's intro. And these are all from the NES version of Punch-Out, composed by Yukio Kaneoka, Akito Nakatsuka, and Kenji Yamamoto.
Yeah, I mean, these are some tracks that really have a lot of nostalgia factor to them. Especially like the Glass Joe song. I mean, it really feels like Punch-Out when you hear it.
It's the track that you hear, like, always when you start the game. Like,
right.
Every time you fire it up, and that's the first guy you play, unless you use code, obviously. But
yeah.
I couldn't even remember on some of these. Like, I was like, oh man, does Mr. Sandman not have a song? But I realized they were the same tracks.
Right, right.
So.
And they did a good job of spacing the characters out that use the same tracks. Glass Joe's one of the first guys, and Mr. Sandman's way towards the end.
Yeah, so. You never hear them back to back. So,
right.
The songs are very familiar to everybody. I think, stuff like, Don Flamenco and Piston Honda, they have their own songs, but they kind of, fit that character.
Right, that no other character it would kind of have worked for. Same thing with like King Hippo. Like, he's another one of those tracks that as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah, this big guy just kind of bouncing onto the stage. So, yeah, I know. Each of the tracks are, unique, and, they're fun. They're fun to listen to.
Right.
So that's why the montage kind of makes sense, because we didn't want to do a block of, like, 2 of these tracks and,
and they're like 10 seconds long. So
yeah, no, but it's fun, though.
So moving on from the NES version of Punch-Out, we have a few games lined up for you guys that you probably haven't heard of before.
It's mostly because they're pretty horrible.
Yeah. So right off the bat, Punch-Out was a huge hit. And Nintendo started working on a sequel that they called Mike Tyson's Intergalactic Power Punch. And this time you play as Tyson, but you're in space fighting aliens. The game wasn't being developed by Nintendo, so when they finally got a chance to take a look at the game, they just didn't think it was very good and shot it down.
So then American Softworks decided that they wanted to publish the game and kind of take it over. So the name was changed from Mike Tyson's Intergalactic Power Punch to Power Punch 2, and the main character was changed to Mark the Tough Guy Tyler. And then they went ahead and released it in 1992. The music for both the prototype and this game, Power Punch 2, is actually a little bit different, though, but it's very subtle.
Right, and it's actually not that bad. It's composed by Marshall Parker, a British composer who worked on quite a few games like Mech Warrior, Shadowrun, and Super Smash TV for the Super Nintendo.
So we're going to play a few tracks from Power Punch 2 and also the Mike Tyson's Intergalactic Power Punch prototype. The first track is track 4, and we don't have any track names for these, so bear with us. So The first track is track 4, then we have track 6, and then we're going to play track 1. And the last track is actually only in the prototype and never made its way into the final version. So we kind of wanted to, throw that in there as well, so you can kind of hear a difference. And once again, the game is composed by Marshall Parker.
Yeah, that was some pretty cool stuff. Again, that was track 4 and 6 from Power Punch 2, and track 1 from Mike Tyson's Intergalactic Power Punch Prototype by Marshall Parker.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised by the music, since I kind of had to force myself to get through, just a few matches of the game.
Yeah, no, I was actually probably just as surprised as you were.
Yeah, no, it's a total departure from what we heard in Punch-Out, right? You got that really kind of rad slap bass going on, and
right.
you can tell he's going for that funk sound. So
yeah, and it's a really kind of mellow sound to it, unlike Punch-Out, where it's very much a lot more like triumphant and has a lot more energy to it, where this is a little bit more mellow kind of sounding, which is not really what you would expect for a boxing game.
Yeah, no, it's really, pretty good music for, the game being so horrible. But like you said, I hate bringing up Rocky again, but it's really got that, pumping you up for the fight kind of thing the whole way through, where this soundtrack is. You were saying earlier when we were listening that it could basically be in Toe Jam and Earl.
Like some very Toe Jam and Earl.
It's really funky,
real kind of mellow. Like I can see them like running around the world, like avoiding people and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I don't know about a fighting game if that would ever fit. And the good thing is that we don't have to actually play this anymore. We could just we could just listen to the music. So, anyways.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on. The next game we actually just both picked up for the eShop, Super Punch-Out. It was published by Nintendo in 1994 for the Super Nintendo. It's a game that I missed out on growing up, so it was really nice to see it re-released.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't buy it sooner. I love the game, and doing this episode though was a really great excuse to pick it up and play through it again. Right,
and like most SNES games, the Super Punch-Out has really aged well. It had those large detailed sprites and really vibrant colors, and the characters aren't so flat looking anymore like the NES version.
Yeah, I remember being so impressed when, even when you win a match and your character, is jumping up and down for, victory, and you can see his muscles kind of bounce, and at that time it felt so cutting edge.
Yeah, and I mean, even the ring has shadows, and I love how the crowd gets darker as it gets further away, and it really gives you that sense of space and perspective, and I mean, it's really a prime example of how beautiful the SNES could be.
Yeah, so a little bit about the gameplay.
It's definitely a lot more fast-paced than the other titles, a lot of action and animation, and not only just from the opponents, but the player moves around a lot more too.
Yeah, blocking's a lot more easier now because you can't really just stand there and block these body shots. Mm-hmm. Another addition is the ducking, but I don't know, it always felt too slow for me, and I really only used it for certain parts, like what's his name, Dragon Chan. He has that flying kick back and forth on the ring, and then there's Kagero, who has that, I don't even know what it's called, like spinning princess hair attack thing or whatever it was.
Yeah, I never really got far enough to see that though, but I just used it for that bear hugger when he does that double punch, like smash punch.
Oh, I didn't even know you could use it to avoid that. That probably would have made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, but you still beat him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the game has a pretty big roster too. I think more than the other games before it, at least. So
right. Let me take a look here. Let's see. We have in an order of appearance, we have Gabby J, Bear Hugger, Piston Hurricane, and of course Bald Bull appears again. Bob Charlie, Dragon Chan. That's actually where I got stuck.
Yeah.
Mass Muscle, Mr. Sandman, Aaron Ryan, Heike Kagero, Mad Clown, Super Macho Man, Narcissus Prince,
Jesus,
Hoy Quarlo, Rick Bruiser, and his brother Nick Bruiser.
Are you sure that's it?
Yeah, that's a long list.
Yeah. So anyways, and the game's got a lot of music too. So we're going to play a few tracks, but let's bring up the composers. Takashi Kumegawa and Masaru Sakakibara.
And they're not really credited for much else.
We do have 3 tracks though, and we're going to start with the menu theme, Minor Circuit Fight, and following that, Bald Bull's theme. So let's get those started, and we'll be right back.
All right, you just heard Menu Theme, Minor Circuit Fight, and Bald Bull's theme composed by Takashi Kumegawa and Masaru Sakakibara from Super Punch-Out.
Yeah, no, the first song, Menu Theme, it kind of starts out with that 90s rock, and then it really, the first thing that comes to my mind is Mario Kart, like the, Mario Kart for Super Nintendo. And like the trumpets come in, and I feel like I'm racing around like, donut planes or something like that.
Right. And it's really heavy hitting, like really kind of pumps you up sound to this song. I really liked it as soon as I heard it for the first time.
Well, you can see that they had like a lot of influence from the NES game, and by, keeping that energy level high and stuff like that.
Right.
Minor Circuit is probably the one that I have fondest memories with, because it's the one that, you can always, it's the easiest circuit to pick up for a beginner too. And so like when I would have, people, friends, and play it and stuff like that, we'd get together and we'd always start with that one. And plus, even if you just wanted to pick up and play, like I had already gone through some of the more difficult circuits, but just going back and wailing on these guys and just owning, it was always fun. So
I mean, from the limited experience I have with this game, I mean, that track really does stand out, and not just because it's one of the few circuits I played. It's a really good track.
Yeah, and so Bald Bull, it reminds me of I get that Aerosmith Walk This Way kind of thing.
I can see that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it loops, so you don't have this really like in depth kind of song, but it's still pretty cool. And
yeah, and it's nice to see that for this game, everyone pretty much gets their own theme music, which was nice. They don't have to share like in the NES version. So
yeah, they're all unique to the characters. So in this game, like the arcade, you don't play as Little Mac. You're back to an unnamed challenger, and the difference is that this time the fighter has blonde hair, and you don't have this wireframe body. You're really transparent. So
exactly, and once again we have the power meter, which works a lot like how the arcade did.
Yeah, and we have a few more tracks lined up too from Super Punch-Out. We have Major Circuit Fight, Piston Hurricane's theme, and then we'll leave you off with the ending theme. And once again, the composers are Takashi Kumegawa and Masaru Sakakibara.
That was Major Circuit, Piston Hurricane's theme, and the ending theme by Takashi Kumegawa and Masaru Sakakibara from Super Punch-Out.
Yeah, the first track, Major Circuit, it's a great track. It's definitely not as good as a Minor Circuit track, but I like it. It's it still has that driving force and
it has that same deep beat to it, but it has that little bit more different embellishments to it to make it sound different.
Yeah, once again, it does still loop quite a few times,
right.
So we try to kind of cut that out, so you don't have like 3 minutes of this 40-second loop.
Right, and we did that with Piston Hurricane's theme as well, which is it loops pretty quickly, but I mean it's I really love that track. It has a lot of energy to it.
It's got it's funny because it's not what we saw in Piston Honda's theme for NES. It's a very, very different departure,
right.
And you have those kind of weird like rising trumpet like wow.
Yeah, that's the part I really like about this song, actually.
It's crazy, and there's another game that does that, and I can't think of off the top of my head, but it has that very similar kind of Super Nintendo. It's a Super Nintendo game, of course.
Yeah.
If I think of it later on, I'll blurt it out. But
right, and when you compare this one to the Bald Bull theme that we heard earlier, I mean they're very different. So you can see that the characters' themes have a unique sound to that character.
Right, and the ending theme it sounds exactly like you would expect from an ending theme. It doesn't have that driving. It's like, hey, you're done.
Right.
Let's roll the credits. Thanks to the Nintendo Club testers and all that
stuff.
Right.
And I felt it had like a sad sound to it, but I couldn't tell if it was sad because you lost or kind of like sad because now it's over. Like you're like you won.
I'm sure that they were like, hey, we
right.
just want to say thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for playing.
No, and it's a great track. I really like that one.
So in 2009, Nintendo decides that it's time to bring back the series for the Wii. And this time it's developed by Next Level Games. And they did Mario Strikers and even recently Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the 3DS.
Nice. This game has 4 main fighting modes. It has Career Mode, Title Defense, Last Stand, and Exhibition. They're all pretty self-explanatory, but they were all really cool additions.
Right. An example of this is the unlockable special mode called Champions Mode. And basically, if you get hit once, you're out. So,
right.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
Yeah, no, I can't even imagine spending too much time in that mode.
Yeah.
The career mode actually takes a lot of its inspiration from the NES version. It's kind of set up the same way. We have 3-minute round timers again, the fatigue meter, and also the star power meter come back.
Yeah, and what makes this meter different than the NES is that it has different levels of power, rather than just the same power punch over and over. So before we get too much further, let's go ahead and get into the composers for the game.
This game has 3 composers, Mike Peacock, Darren Radtke, and Chad York. And all these guys worked for Next Level Games. So like you were saying earlier, they have games like Mario Strikers, Luigi's Mansion's Dark Moon.
All of which have just amazing music.
Right.
So, and we were so close to putting Mario Strikers in the soccer episode, but I'm glad we held off.
Yeah, we decided to save it for later. Anyways, in the lineup, we have Minor Circuit, Glass Joe, and Major Circuit. So let's give those a listen and we'll be right back.
You just heard Minor Circuit, Glass Joe, and Major Circuit for Punch-Out! For the Nintendo Wii, composed by Mike Peacock, Darren Radtke, and Chad York. And it's okay if you want to go ahead and rewind it and listen again. We'll wait.
Yeah, I mean, talk about nostalgia. I mean, these really hit home to that thing that you loved about the NES.
Oh yeah, no. When I first got the game and started listening to the music, I like right away, like I was pumped. I couldn't.
No, it was a great throwback to those games while making it feel modern and having a really great sound to it.
Yeah, Minor Circuit, the first track that we played was, I mean, the best track. I think the best track out of this block. I mean, it's got this driving force all the way through, and it has that same kind of, that bass drum and kind of hi-hat thing going on throughout the whole song. But then it has kind of like these sections of different themes. Like you hear the main theme from the NES, and then you hear
like Mac Down and
Little Mac getting knocked out theme, and those are all in the same track, but they kind of break it up so it's not this overly repetitive,
right? And it has these parts where it slows down and it kind of gets really cool and minimal, and then it just bam right in your face, and it really picks up again with that, like you said, with another theme to it, and it just really keeps it going with all that high intensity. And
I dig that the way that they have the guitar and stuff on there. And I looked up, I couldn't remember the actual term for it, but I think it's palm muting and pitch harmonics for what they're doing with the guitar there. But it just sounds so clean and just well recorded, like studio recorded. So
and it's nice to hear with actual instruments instead of synthesized approximations of the sound.
It definitely mixes it up. And Glass Joe, we threw that in. It's so different from all the other tracks in the game, and we have another block coming up, but it's so different than a lot of the other tracks, and has that very French kind of sound to it right in the get-go. It almost sounds like it has this bossa nova kind of undertone too.
Right. They did a really good job with this game taking the unique characters and giving their songs like a lot of character to the song, to where it definitely fits with that guy. And I mean, we love Glass Joe from the NES. I mean, he's the first guy you fight, and so we thought it was really neat to see that he got
Iconic.
Such a good treatment to his music.
Yeah, and like you were saying, there's those kind of subtle hints to that main theme back in all of their music. And but they find a unique way of kind of presenting it again, so you don't just get bored of the same song.
Right. Yeah, I mean, kind of like if you listen to the GoldenEye soundtrack, they really mix that James Bond theme sound into the songs really creatively, and you don't really get tired of it. But it kind of, each time you hear the song, it has that theme to it, so it feels like it goes with the game. Yeah, and it's nice. It kind of really hits that nostalgia chord again each time you hear a new track.
And Major Circuit, which was the last track that we played, and sorry, we're probably getting cursed out by all the actual DJs out there, because Glass Joe is such a different track than the two around it, but we kind of want to mix it up so you're not hearing the same thing. But Major Circuit, that was another great kind of 90s rock and roll track, and no, I liked it a lot.
Right. I mean, I love the guitars, and it's very high energy, and it still, once again, hits those same themes from the other tracks, and it's just a really good song.
And it kind of reminds me of, because like Minor Circuit, it reminds me of the Super NES, because that first song, the Minor Circuit in the Super Nintendo version, is the one that really I remember the best, and it's my favorite track in the album. And Major Circuit is very good in both the Super Nintendo and the Wii version, but it's not the one that you remember as well, at least in my...
Right. I mean, when you pop on the game, you spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, and every time you start the game, like we mentioned before, that you start with that, and so it kind of really gets ingrained, and it starts to feel more like this is the theme of the game, instead of almost like the title screen, because you skip past it and you get right into the fight. And one of the great things about a long series like this is they have such a deep roster of characters to pick from.
Yeah, we have a lot of returning characters. Glass Joe, Von Kaiser, Disco Kid, King Hippo, Piston Hondo. And they had to change his name to avoid maybe possible issues with the car company.
Right, that makes sense.
Bear Hugger's back, Great Tiger, Don Flamenco, Aaron Ryan, Soda Popinski, Bald Bull, Super Macho Man, Mr. Sandman, Donkey Kong, and there's a few other small name changes and stuff in there, but basically the only real addition is Donkey Kong.
Right, and this series also added a 2-player split screen mode. And basically, once you build up enough power, kind of like in the arcade, their KO meter, you could transform into this hulked out Little Mac, which they called Giga Mac.
Yeah, I don't know. Like for me, it's a cool idea, but I guess it kind of takes away from what I like about Punch-Out, because Punch-Out was always kind of more of a puzzle game to me than an actual fighting game. It was really all about learning those opponent moves and the timing and combinations. So
yeah, it was a neat idea, but I didn't really enjoy that mode that much.
Yeah, I actually never played it. So, but we do have a few more songs to play. Let's start it with Piston Hondo, Title Screen, and Super Macho Man. So let's fire those up, and we'll be right back.
That was another great set of music from Mike Peacock, Darren Radtke, and Chad York. That was Piston Hondo's theme, the title screen, and Super Macho Man's theme.
Piston Hondo, starts off with that really, I hate to say it, but like Oriental kind of sound,
right.
like Chinese gong and
and they really changed up that theme to fit that style, which was pretty cool. So they kind of slowed it down and kind of elongated that same theme from the earlier song.
But you still have that really ambient like drum beat underneath the whole way through, so that it kind of keeps the pace still going, even though they slow down the melody a little bit. So
right, and then towards the end of the song, it really gets really dramatic, and it almost felt to me kind of like a movie score. Like it felt very kind of serious almost, and kind of epic. Like something was really awesome going on. So.
Yeah, I'm glad we put that one in because it really is. It really is a cool track. It's very cool. And title screen, we wanted to add that in there because this is the first, right when you pop in the disc and, through the Wii menu and you fire it up, that's the first track you hear. And it's a good song. Like,
it's perfect for a title screen song. It really is fun and energetic and kind of gets you pumped up to really get in there and start fighting.
And it's a song that didn't really have, like a nostalgia factor to it because it's the first time that we've seen it in the series, right? So it's kind of like this new introduction, like, hey, here's this new game. Even though we're building on the old, we still have we want to present you with something new right off the bat. And then that's where, you kind of get into the, the circuits, and then you get into that fight that so well.
Yeah. And then Super Macho Man's theme was another really cool track that they took and they added a lot of character to where it fits with him a lot.
I mean, it sounds like it was straight up composed by Dick Dale, and I love surf rock. I think it's so awesome, and it has that really. Like it just makes me feel like I'm on the beach and you're seeing this, greased up old guy, flexing his muscles, wearing a Speedo.
He's the bully on the beach and he's trying to attract all the ladies from you.
So. Yeah, he probably has all the ladies. He's a good looking guy. Anyways, no, it's an awesome track, and I've played that a few times over, and just I can't get enough of it. So it's really awesome.
So moving away from Punch-Out, we should quickly mention Doc Lewis's Punch-Out.
Yeah, it's a Nintendo Club reward, and it's kind of part of the series, right? So.
Yeah, and there's not really much to say about it. It's not a very long game, but it was released in 2009 as WiiWare in the States. Like you said, it was for Club Nintendo members only who had reached Platinum status. So if you didn't get it then, you probably don't have a way to get it anymore.
There's probably no other way, yeah.
And it's a prequel to Punch-Out for the Wii. And it was also developed by Next Level Games.
But it's just like a mini game, right?
Yeah, basically you're just sparring with Doc Lewis. Like I said, the game is really short. Basically, once you knock him down a couple times, it's it's over. So
I actually never had a chance to play it, so I guess I probably never will at this point. But you're probably not missing out too much on this game because it was just that kind of reward thing, and there's not a lot.
It would have been kind of a neat little addition. But anyway, I think that's it. So I think it's time for us to wrap up.
Sounds good. We covered music from Punch-Out and Super Punch-Out in the arcade.
Yeah, it was really cool this year. We were lucky enough to play these games side by side at the California Extreme.
Yeah, no, if you're in the Bay Area, it's one of the best arcade conventions around, so you should definitely check it out.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. And actually, we should post some of the videos we took online.
No, I think that's a good idea. Anyways, we also covered music from the NES and Super NES version of Punch-Out, as well as Power Punch 2.
And lastly, you heard tracks from Punch-Out for the Wii.
Thanks again for listening to our rundown of the series. Hopefully it brought back some good memories.
Yeah, and we had so much fun going back and playing these games. And if you haven't played in a while, I really recommend going back and checking them out. Also, you should check us out online at pixelatedaudio.com, where we'll have our show notes and a full track list of everything we played today.
Yeah, we're also on Twitter at Pixelated Audio and can be found on iTunes. This is a passion project for us.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this isn't our full-time job.
Yeah, right. I'm an engineer, and I draw a pretty mean hand turkey. But James is a professional illustrator, and he's doing all of the artwork for our episodes. So definitely make sure you check them out. They're pretty awesome. You can leave us some feedback on the show, and feel free to comment on the episode artwork as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, don't hesitate to let us know. Taking us out is a remix track called Dream Fighter by Scott Peeples. So make sure to check out OCReMix.org to see more of his stuff and a bunch of other just amazing remixes. Thanks again for listening. See you guys next episode.